Hey, welcome back to the Lead Up Podcast. I'm your host and publisher, Mike Harbour. Really excited that you're joining me today, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or you're watching on YouTube. Yeah, we do this on YouTube as well. We upload this into our Harbour Resources channel. So if you haven't checked that out and you prefer to watch, then go to YouTube and watch our videos as well. Hey, I'm really excited today. We're going to talk about 5 laws that secretly control your leadership. You're probably familiar with these laws, but what you may be is unaware that they're controlling your leadership, running scripts in the background that control how you think, how you show up, how you communicate in your leadership. So we're going to talk about these 5 laws and how they're always operating in your life and your leadership, whether consciously or unconsciously. They're there. They don't announce themselves. They quietly shape how you decide, how others experience your leadership, how you show up many times. And leaders who want to become elite and scale their leadership the fastest to make a big impact aren't the ones who work harder. They're the ones who become aware of what's already influencing them. Let's get into the 5 laws. I don't want to waste your time. Before we jump in, though, I do want to ask you to do this. Pause right now. Grab something to write with. Take notes. We want to trigger the subconscious mind to remember these things into the future. So writing is one of the critical ways to do that. Also, you might want to bring a colleague in. Bring some of your friends in. Listen to this together. Make this a mastermind group, because I'm going to share some things with you today that are going to make you think differently. And we want you to think differently, but also those around you, because when everybody's thinking gets better, our cultures get better, our leadership get better, our teams and organizations get better. All right, here's the first law. I'm sure you've heard this before. It's been conditioned into you, maybe from years or decades ago. But the first law is Murphy's Law. You've heard of Murphy's Law. Do you know what it is? It's usually framed as pessimism. What can go wrong will go wrong. How many times have you said that? How many times have you heard that? How many times have you believed that? How often is that working in the background subconsciously in your mind where things just come out? What can go wrong will go wrong. We're going to apply that to leadership today, because in leadership, it shows up as fear-driven focus. And the more a leader fixates on what might fail, on fear, we start programming our mind to go a certain direction. And if you're doing that too often as a leader, if you're fixated on this fear of what might fail, you're going to be more reactive in your decisions. Your decision-making becomes more reactive and fear-based. Maybe you won't do what needs to be done, and you withhold a decision, or you delay a decision, or you don't give freedom to your employees and your team to go forward because you're afraid of what might happen. You're afraid of looking bad. You're afraid of failure. And so you become more reactive versus proactive in your leadership. Also, leaders who fixate on what might fail, they control more. They try to control their teams more, the behaviors of their team more, the actions of others more. I think about it like parenting, this idea that we've termed helicopter parenting, where we hover over everybody to make sure they're doing things the way we want it done, when we want it done, how we want it done. And look, I is one of those leaders. I've been there before, afraid to fail. Now I'm afraid to not fail. I think about this in my podcast. You're listening to episode 489. I've had 488 chances before this one to make some mistakes, to try to get it better. But before I started publishing this podcast in February of 2019, I would make excuses. I would delay. Who wants to listen to me? What do I have to say? I have enough to talk about. Here I am, 7 years later, still doing this thing, still having people listen, still having new listeners join us. And hopefully you're a returning listener. But I was trying to control the outcome versus just control the result or the action, to take action. The more a leader fixates on what might fail, the more tension there is on their teams as well. And we try to micromanage how people show up together, how they work together. We create this tension that doesn't allow speed to action, speed to process, speed to system, speed to service. We're creating fear because our team is afraid if they make a mistake, how we might come down on. So here's what we have to understand as a leader. Your fear of failure doesn't stay internal. It leaks into your behavior, your communication, and your culture. And culture is simply the behaviors of those around us, right? It's how we show up. It's how we behave. And if we are behaving from a place of fear, then our culture is going to be a reflection of our leadership. Certainly, you've got to understand this. I've talked many times on this podcast, if you've been listening. Self-awareness is number one competency you have to develop. Understanding what you're saying, what you're thinking, how you're showing up. If you want your results in leadership to change, it begins with how you think. And that's what this episode is all about. If we reflect on what's going on in our current workforce, the challenges that we face, we can really see this playing out real time. And I'm just going to share one simple example. I hope that you don't fall into this example, but I'm literally hearing leaders every day that I talk to who are hiring new employees blame the new employee before they even interview this new employee. They start blaming the failure of a new employee before they've ever done an interview by saying things like this generation just doesn't want to work. These kids have no work ethic. This generation is lazy. This is foreshadowing failure before you even have given them a chance to succeed. You're projecting failure. What will go wrong? What can go wrong will go wrong. You start looking for them to fail. This is a critical understanding that we have to have in our leadership. We project our fear, our belief on those, and guess what the brain does? The brain seeks that out. The brain becomes a slave to what we tell it. If we tell it things will go wrong, the brain is going to produce the result. The brain only does what you tell it to do. Now, you may say, no, it doesn't. It tells me what to do. Yeah, because you've told it what to do. You've told it how to show up. You've told it what to look for. You've told it how to communicate, how not to communicate, how to be proactive, how not to be proactive. You have told your brain to look for failure instead of looking for success. If you've programmed yourself that what can go wrong will go wrong, then you will lead yourself and your team to this result. And you may say, Mike, that's hogwash. Okay, just go do the research. You don't have to listen to me. Just go do the research. Look, I've been studying this stuff for 30 years. Self-development, leadership development, brain science, habits, results, how these things show up. The more I tell myself positive things, the better I show up. The more I tell myself negative things, the worse I'm going to show up. This podcast is a great example. When I begin to say, hey, I can do this. Hey, I can show up. Hey, I can share things. Hey, people want to hear this. I start showing up in a better way. The brain starts doing what I tell it to do. A story that I was reminded of as I was preparing for this episode goes back to a book I read years ago. It was a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. It was written by a guy named Dr. Maxwell. You can go grab a copy on Amazon. And I'm not going to summarize the whole book to you. I'm just going to share one story out of the book. This mom is teaching her son, who we'll call Michael, how to drive. And she's yelling at Michael as Michael's driving. Michael, watch the curb. Watch the curb. Michael, watch the curb. Michael hits the curb. Why? See, it's not important that Michael hit the curb. The question is, why did Michael hit the curb? You could say Michael's not a good driver. Now, I could say, where did Michael's mom tell him to look? What was Michael focused on? Because he was focused on failure and not success, he hit the curb. And you could say, oh, you're blaming his parents. No, I'm blaming his communication from his parents. I'm blaming his parents. He still hit the curb. He could have dodged the curb. But Michael's mom should have calmly said, hey, watch the road in front of you. Hey, here's where we're going. Here's how we need to show up. Here's how we're behaving today. Here's our goal today. I do a ton of work in the healthcare space. We program people for failure. We've got all of these things that we have to follow, systems, processes. And look, I'm a systems process guy. But we're trying to condition failure out of people instead of condition success into them. Hey, let's focus on how we can show up better for our customer versus, hey, we're failing over here. We're in the 25th percentile in customer service. Same idea, but we're focusing on success versus failure. What can go wrong will go wrong over here. What can go right will go right. How about that? What if we changed that? For every reaction, there's an opposite and equal action. What can go wrong will go wrong. What about what can go right will go right if we focus on that? So my question is, what are you programming yourself and your team to watch for? What could go wrong? Or what could go right? What does success look like? Here's something I want you to think about. The moment fear becomes your primary input, it quietly becomes your strategy. See, strong leaders don't ignore risk. That's not what we're talking about here. But they prepare without panic and decide without spiraling. Because leadership demands your courage, not your certainty. It does demand courage, especially today. We can't be certain about anything. The world is changing at Mach 7, Mach 10. That's fast, by the way. Just go watch Top Gun, Maverick. Mach 10 is fast. And that's the way the world is changing today. Let's look at law number 2. Don't know if you've heard this. It's called Kidlin's Law, Kidlin. Kidlin's Law. Kidlin's Law says this: if you can write a problem down clearly, you've already solved half of it. See, most leadership challenges aren't execution problems. They're thinking problems. We spend a lot of time thinking and talking about them, planning them, but we have the wrong thinking in them. Leaders say things like, we're misaligned. The culture's off. People aren't taking ownership. But if you can't clearly define the problem, your team can't solve it. One characteristic of a great team is this. I want you to write this down. Characteristic of a great team. 1 is the ability to identify and fanatically fight for resolution of the issues and challenges that we have. Let me repeat that. The ability to identify a problem and then fanatically fight for resolution of the problem, to solve it. Many organizations, many leaders I work with, and maybe this is you, we keep making the same mistakes, or we continue to have the same issue, hoping it will go away. Hope's not a strategy, by the way. See, in those situations, we aren't leading, we're living a nightmare. Literally, if the same problem keeps showing up, we're living a nightmare. And I know you and your leadership, you don't want to stay there. I think about this when I talk about employee engagement or patient safety in healthcare. We've been talking about these same things for 30 plus years with little to no change. We're talking, but our behavior isn't changing. Why is that? We keep getting the same results. We know what that definition is. We need to fight for clear behavior change that needs to occur. And we need to be a fanatic that's focused on the new behaviors for a long time, by the way. It doesn't happen in one conversation. It doesn't happen in one presentation. That's why if you listen to me here on the Lead Up Podcast, I talk about the same things over and over. Now, in different ways. You maybe have even heard this podcast in a different episode, shared in a different way. Now, I haven't shared these 5 laws before, but I've talked about mindset and thinking that has to happen. We need to fight. As a leader, you got to be willing to fight for clarity of behavior change that has to happen. At Harbour Resources, that's where we work. We don't just deliver leadership content. Yeah, that's one thing we do, but behind that, we're trying to deliver leadership content that's going to change a behavior that we're going to practice over time that eventually changes the results. See, one leadership training session doesn't change behavior. It gives you the idea of the behaviors that have to change. It's the implementation of that over time that changes the way you show up, right? And you have to be a fanatic about that. You have to be gritty and persevere and change what your subconscious is automatically making you do because you've conditioned it over time. Here's a thought. Confusion is never a team failure. It's a leadership signal. And you're the leader. I'm talking to leaders here. It's a leadership signal. Signals don't mean failure. It's a signal that, hey, my leadership communication wasn't clear enough. I haven't been clear on behaviors. I haven't been clear on direction. I haven't been clear on where we're going to go. Clarity is king. It's not micromanagement. Clarity is respect. Clarity is leadership. Grit is leadership. Behavior change is the work of elite leaders, and that takes grit, that takes clarity, that takes courage, as I talk about after Law 1. And leaders who create clarity create momentum, and you got to get momentum going. It takes a while to get going. Just think about the flywheel principle that Jim Collins teaches in his book, Good to Great. It may take a while to get that flywheel turning, that momentum going, but then we just have to nudge it along. As a leader, your leadership gets easier once you persist through the hard times. Let's look at Law 3, Gilbert's Law. Gilbert's Law reminds us your success is in your hands. I'm going to step on your toes. If I haven't done that already, I'm going to step on your toes here. Your success is in your hands. Leadership reveals how comfortable you are with responsibility. The number one thing you have to do as a leader, when you raise your hand and say, yes, I will be the leader of this team, of this department, of this company, is you have to take responsibility for where it goes. I talk to CEOs about this every day. They complain about the people on their team not doing what they need them to do. Who's responsible? You're the CEO. You're the leader. You are responsible. Success is in your hands. Now, that may mean we need to coach people up. It may mean we need to coach people out. But there's a gap between those two that we've got to solve some issues. When outcomes fall short, struggling leaders ask this: why don't they do this? That's what struggling leaders ask. Strong leaders, elite leaders ask this: what am I responsible for changing? What am I responsible for changing? Where did I fall short in my messaging? Where did I fall short in setting clear expectations of direction, of behavior, of results that we're after? See, ownership isn't about blaming others. It's about power. It's your power. In leadership, there's great power in leadership. Are you abdicating that power to someone else? Like blaming outside forces, blaming outside people, blaming others. Now, what I don't want you to hear is that people won't do sometimes what we need them to do. That's where we have to coach people out. We're coaching them up, setting expectations, and not everybody's going to go with us. I often say this: as a leader, we're like a bus driver. We're taking people on a trip. We make bus stops. People get off. That doesn't mean everybody's going to go to the end of the journey with us. We have to stop and let people off from time to time. But you have to take responsibility and ownership for that. The moment you stop owning the outcome is the moment you lose your influence. When leaders model ownership, accountability becomes safe and solutions flow. I go back to this blame game we're living in right now. Leaders are blaming outside forces, blaming generations, blaming other people, blaming the government. I'm not saying all those things don't have some truth to them. What I'm saying is those things can be true, and we can still take ownership. We can still take responsibility. We can still lead effectively. What makes the difference up is not what you're blaming, but what you're doing to lead through those realities around those challenges. See, elite leaders get busy adapting. Elite leaders get busy overcoming. Elite leaders get busy growing and learning new skills, new ways. And if we do not do this, we get left behind. Look, when I think about getting left behind, we can go back to Blockbuster Video. Maybe you're old enough to remember Blockbuster Video. We all used to go to the video store and rent VCR tapes, and then it was DVDs. And then Netflix came along. And now no one even knows what Blockbuster Video is. Everybody's watching streaming TV, Netflix, and all the other channels that we have. Leaders didn't adapt. They tried to stay the same. They got left behind. They no longer exist. My question for you is, are you going to be a leader that continues to exist the next 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, however long you think you have left in your career? You have to become willing to adapt, to grow, to learn, to overcome new challenges that are going to be in front of you every day because of the way the things change nowadays. Let's move on to law number 4. I hope you're learning something today. This is called Wilson's Law. Wilson's Law teaches us this: prioritize knowledge and intelligence, and wealth will follow. Now, I'm not talking about just monetary wealth here, wealth in all areas, okay? So I want you to stick with me here. Prioritize knowledge and intelligence, and wealth will follow. In leadership, this means one thing: your thinking sets the ceiling for your impact. How you think. Great leaders don't rely on effort alone. I used to think, I just got to work harder. I got to work harder. If I work harder, I'll get there. Look, I'm not saying we don't need to work hard. We do. But great leaders don't rely on effort alone. They build mental models. They think in systems. They look for leverage. Effort creates movement, but thinking creates direction. The more complex environment that you operate in, that you work in, the more valuable, clear thinking becomes. But here's the reality: most people have never been taught how to think. All through your life, all through your education, you were taught what to think, but not how to think. Even though colleges portray themselves, oh, we're teaching people how to think different. No, they're teaching them what to think. They're conditioning us what to think. And then we get into the real world, into leadership, and we have this one model that we've been taught to think, and only think about that, and we don't look for different ways. And I'm challenging you to change the way you think. Look, you can say, Mike, that's not true. It is true. Look, I grew up in a very violent, dysfunctional, abusive home as a kid. I had one way of thinking when I left home. And if I didn't change that, I would not be standing in front of you today. I would not be leading people at a high level. I would not be working with leaders across the globe. I had to go change the way I think. I had to create different models, different understanding, different behaviors. So I don't share any of that to impress you, but to impress upon you. If you don't change the way you think, nothing in your life is going to change. I'm not talking about just learning a new skill. I'm talking about learning how to think. See, the more complex environment you're in, the more valuable that becomes. I have to change my thinking every day because I'm working with leaders from different backgrounds, different understanding, different organizations. Leadership isn't a hustle game. It's a thinking game. And when was the last time you stopped and had a meeting with self? Just to think, to prioritize, to plan your success, to question your thinking. 90+% of the leaders I work with are running around with their hair on fire, playing whack-a-mole. And I'm on a mission to help change that. Stop. Have a meeting with self. This is what I call just meeting with self. That could be 30 seconds. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 2 hours. I'm a big fan of Cal Newport's work in Deep Work, his book. Go grab a copy of that book, Deep Work. Big fan of that. Whether it's a 5-minute deep work session or a 5-hour deep work session, you have to change the way you think. And the only way you can do that is to stop running around with your hair on fire and take a minute, take a pause, have a thinking session with self. The most important meeting you have every day, and I know you have some important meetings, but the most important meeting you have every day is the meeting with self. It allows you to change the energy and the pace on your team. It helps give them focus on the right things, not just how busy and chaotic the world is. See, a leader's job is to set the pace, to set the energy, to set the temperatures, to set the right direction. And if you aren't thinking into that, then you're running around the way you've always run around, moving into these challenges and issues and creating panic, creating chaos, creating stress, creating burnout, creating overwhelm for your team. Does your team know where their focus should be today? How they should show up? See, the thinking is the highest return you have as a leader. The skill, if you develop this skill, it's the highest return you have as a leader. When was the last time you questioned your thinking? When something wasn't working? When someone wasn't doing what you need them to do? Did you blame them or question your thinking and about how you could approach them differently? See, your team is a reflection of your best thinking. How are they performing? They're a reflection of your best thinking. I spend as much time thinking in what I do as I do taking action. Hey, before I presented this podcast to you today, before I record, I had a thinking session, multiple thinking sessions, by the way, to prepare a good message for you. I hope this is good. I hope it's challenging you. What I don't mean is getting paralyzed in your thinking, okay? I don't mean getting stuck. A meeting with self session has got to be strategic. It's not a time to become critical of ourselves, but critical of our systems, critical of our processes, critical of our communication with others so that we can do it better and we're delivering the results that we want. Let's look at the fifth and final law I wanted to share with you today. It's called Falkland's Law, Falkland. Falkland's Law. It says this: if a decision isn't necessary, don't make it. If a decision isn't necessary, don't make it. Let me start right here. Every leader I work with tells me, hey, Mike, I just need my team to be better critical thinkers, be more independent, do things for themselves. And so my question to them is, how often do you let them do things for themselves? How often do you let them answer their own question? Or do you try to solve other problems? See, many leaders feel pressure to always have an answer. But over-decision creates dependency. You become the bottleneck. It creates burnout for you because you don't have enough space to think, to do other things that are more important. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is just to pause and let others step up. Not every decision needs your voice, but every decision reveals your judgment. See, if you have a team that's overly dependent on you, that tells me a lot about your thinking. It tells me a lot about, is this Falkland's Law working in the background? See, mature leadership is knowing when to act and when not to. Allowing and even requesting others on your team to make a decision creates independence. It strengthens their critical thinking skills. It allows them to not have to wait on you. So here's the coaching for you. Resist the urge to have all the answers. Resist the urge to solve all their problems. I often say the true measure of leadership is the ability to develop another leader who can develop another leader. But answering all their questions only prevents their growth, creates dependence on you. It doesn't create more leaders. Look, we could dive deeper, talk longer about each one of these things. What I hope that I've done is I've challenged your thinking a little bit. I want you to pause after this episode, and hopefully you took notes on those 5 laws. But I want you to ask yourself, where are these laws operating in the background in my leadership, in my thinking? See, the question isn't whether they're shaping your leadership, it's whether you're using them intentionally. The laws are always at work. As you step into your next decision, ask yourself, which of these laws am I ignoring? And what is it costing me? I hope this episode has sharpened your thinking. I want you to share it with someone else. If you didn't, re-listen to it with a friend, with a colleague, and y'all challenge each other when you see that showing up in each other's leadership. If I can be of assistance to you, hey, on my website, harborresources.com, lots of free downloads on how to recruit, retain, attract better talent. If you haven't got a copy of my book, Quit Losing Talent, the expanded edition, go to Amazon, grab a copy of that. Leave us a review on your favorite listening platform or YouTube. That helps us. That helps the algorithm. That helps this message just get out to other people. If I can be of value to you in a coaching situation or in training and development within your company, hey, pass my name along to those who make those decisions. Really appreciate you tuning in today. Continue to lead up. Continue to lead well. Continue to grow. Continue to tune in to the Lead Up Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.